they do deal with. I think that Labour is full of challenge. I think that
Let's play the intro music. Oh, no. Don't want to get a copyright claim. It's probably give me the edit option that edit out that later. Yeah, what's up, everyone? It's been a while, hasn't it? I'm gonna get back into the flow of things, I think. How are you guys doing? How are you guys doing? It's late, but I've got a day off tomorrow from work, so I'll stream a bit late today. Gonna try and figure out the pace of the channel and things like that. I think moving to live streaming might be better. Maybe try and do 2 live streams a week. I don't know. I don't understand how to grow an audience on this platform, honestly. I did just see this clip that caught my eye, so I kind of want to watch it before we discuss the main topics of the day, really. So I've just seen someone post this, so let's have a look.
Who quit, and this ex-Labour politician who quit amid claims of racism now represents reform.
Sharia law, for instance, they're trying to bring that here. That's not something we celebrate.
Who's bringing that here?
The asylum seekers, some of the asylum seekers, the legal migrants.
They're trying to bring Sharia law?
Yes.
Where's that at?
Well, do you not have conversations in the street?
So the asylum seekers are trying to bring Sharia law to the streets of Glasgow?
Absolutely. You just have to take a walk through Glasgow city centre any given day.
Now, I don't live in Glasgow. I don't know how many people who are using irregular means to get to the UK that are going to seek asylum in Glasgow. Could be wrong on that one, but seems unlikely.
And I think probably the fact, the line of questioning that you have, if you're so shocked by this, you'd be even more shocked at what you find.
I'm just asking genuine questions because, if councillors and elected officials are going to make those statements, surely it needs to be corroborated and substantiated.
There is...
This lady feels like she never left 2006. Sharia law was popular then too, apparently. Yeah.
Stacks
It's been popular for a long time.
of evidence online.
Police say Sharia law is not being enforced.
Should have asked her for a source. What about her? You're so close to asking the good questions. So, yeah, once we get a bigger audience in, I'll explain Operation Flame Sabre later. But for now, we'll just go on with the main topics. And yeah, that video just caught my eye. But we'll give, there's a lot going on at the moment. You've got the Labour Party who are... Sorry, guys. Drop my mic.
I think that Labour is full of challenges about...
I don't know if that hurt your eardrums or anything like that. Sorry about that. I think the Labour Party
how
wanting to
full of-
talk about Brexit now is kind of pathetic, to be honest with you. I don't know what more to say about it, to be honest.
I think that Labour is full of challenges about how they do deal with the absence of money, when so much of this is about the stuff that was eroded over 15 years.
No, that's not.
It's absolutely true.
This has got nothing to do with money. This is about
it's to do with Brexit as well.
This is about
which was a disaster.
No.
And I'm glad that at last Labour is admitting that this is something that we have to admit publicly.
I think for me the problem is, it's been over a year. Starmer voted for the Brexit deal, and he ran on a platform of make Brexit work. Is he saying that Brexit is unworkable, or is he saying he's not good enough to make Brexit work? Because that's the mandate he ran on. That's the platform he ran on. So it's a bit rich for him to come back around now, because Farage is doing one of the polls, and the correct thing to do was say, Brexit was a disaster. To make sure that was in the public zeitgeist before saying you make Brexit work, if that's the route you're going to go down. But he was so desperate to talk about no customs union, no this, no that. It just, what more can you say?
Brexit has been part of the great economic crisis.
The government's
of this country.
looking around, it's making tons of mistakes, and it's just looking around for other people to blame rather than taking responsibility.
Mistakes, Mark.
No,
you made no mistakes.
We absolutely did.
You made your own mistake.
And we should take responsibility for them. But the government's looking around for other people to blame. Brexit is an excuse. We're hearing the productivity excuse now.
I think that
that's the problem. You're blaming all of these things, right? It just doesn't make sense. And politicians talk about they want bold ideas. I saw this from Andrew Marr, right? I told this to the geezer last year.
The cover story has prompted quite a response from the left and the right, who are kind of angry at you for saying, well, I spotted that this was going to be a disaster. Andrew, why didn't you?
I think to be despairing about the clown show that we'd had under the Conservatives in the last few years was natural, and I have absolutely no hint of apology for that. But also, I think when you are confronted by a potential new government with people like Starmer and Reeves and the rest of it, and they are saying what sound like the plausible things about the importance of investment, about reliable, consistent economic policy.
When you look at what they were talking about, it was the fiscal rules, which were basically bringing borrowing down as a percentage of GDP, with no actual mechanism to do any of those things. They could talk about all of the kind of correct things, but they never explained how they were going to achieve those things. They had aims but no actual objectives. There was no way for them to actually get to the stuff they were looking for.
Then I think it's natural to try to think, actually, you know what, this could work. And I think all of us, wherever we're on the left or the right, we have to look at our system and from time to time give...
It felt like it's either blind optimism, but the thing is, like, you're in the news space, you're an analyst, you're meant to give your honest assessment, not base it based on blind hope and copium. You know, that's what he was doing. He was hoping that Starmer would be different based on nothing. There was no evidence. There was nothing to make him believe that they could do better.
Give them a chance, think this might work.
The New Statesman.
It didn't make sense to
Andrew,
believe
your
that.
cover story has prompted.
There was no reason for him to really believe in that. Starmer talked about change, but he didn't really talk about change, things like that. It doesn't make sense. And so that's what I mean. Like, when you do analysis on any subject, it should not be cloaked in emotion or things like that, or false hope. It should be just your honest take based on what you have seen and your understanding of a subject. That's what it should be based on, nothing else. Marr was writing a whole New Statesman essays about how Starmer was going to be so radical. There was nothing about the competition with the clown show. Yeah, Marr genuinely believed this would be a huge turning point for essentially for Britain. That's what he was trying to push. This idea that it'd be so radically different. But ultimately, it's still pretty bad. It's not the same clown show, but it's still awful in my opinion. It's still absolutely terrible. Ed Davey talking about the small boat crossings.
I mean, let's remember, and this is really important to push back against people like Nigel Farage and the Conservatives. Prior to Brexit, we had a return agreement with 27 European countries under what was called the Dublin Convention, and that acted as a real deterrent. And let's just show, now we're out of there, it's actually acting as a magnet, because asylum seekers going to one European country know they can't go to another European country because they will be returned under European law, but they're not able to be returned by the UK. So Brexit has not only prevented us returning people legally and fairly as we used to be able to do, it's not only got rid of that deterrent, which is what Rwanda was supposed to be all about, it's actually attracting more people. So I would argue very strongly that the Conservatives and Nigel Farage, the champions of Brexit, caused the small boat crisis themselves.
Which I think Davey is 100% correct, because we didn't have this problem before Brexit because of the Dublin Agreement. You still had people trying to sneak into lorries and things like that, but it was nowhere near as bad as it is now. And so, yeah, Farage is absolutely to blame. I saw this community note talking about how in the final year, there were more transfers under the Dublin Agreement than transfers out. It's transfers in versus transfers out. But the problem is, we're not discussing transfers. We're talking about the small boats. That's the main problem, because it's visible. People can see it, and people are being tricked into believing that they're kind of jumping the queue and all of this stuff, when that's simply not the case. There's no mechanism for these people to apply for asylum unless they're on British soil, and that's why they keep doing. So that's what's happened here, and I think that's one of the things that the media should do a better job of explaining to the public, especially like people who should be a lot smarter than what they are. Explain to the public, like, look, they're not jumping the queue. The problem is the only way for them to get in the queue is by crossing to British soil, because we don't have a processing centre in France. We don't let people apply for asylum in embassies and consulates and things like that. They have to physically be here unless they're from a certain few number of countries from around the world. I think it's Hong Kong. It's Hong Kong, Ukraine. There's another one. Mine's gone blank on that one. There's only a few countries that we offer it to. Might have been Afghanistan, but they closed that scheme. So it doesn't make sense. So I think if I was Ed Davey, I'd be pushing that point as well, quite strongly. There was some stuff on the royals. It would appear that from Buckingham Palace statement, Prince Andrew remains 8th in line to the throne, Chancellor of the state. So legally, he could still stand in for King Charles if necessary. However, Angela Rayner wanted to use the Charles' coronation to revise legislation and remove Prince Andrew from as Council of State. She felt that she could not justify perpetuating that nonsense role in public life or the royal pecking order. But it looks like he might have given up his titles. From Buckingham Palace, Majesty has initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles, and honours of Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew will now be known as Andrew Mountbatten, Windsor, His lease on Royal Lodge has to date provided him with legal protection to continue in residence. Formal notice has been served to surrender the lease, and he will move to alternate private accommodation, so some other mansion somewhere else. If you watched our Sunday roast episode with the one of the guys from Republic, they do some good stuff over there. These censures are deemed unnecessary, notwithstanding the fact that he continues to deny the allegations against him. Their Majesties wish to make clear that their thoughts and utmost sympathies have been and will remain with the victims and survivors of any forms of abuse. So it's clear that, wherever Royal Lodgings is in now, the King wants him moved out of there and into another building, which, again, if it's not into Her Majesty's Royal Prisons, I don't care. HMP Pentonville needs another inmate. I saw this from Ipsos. 64% of Brits support a wealth tax as proposed by Greens, including 75% of 2024 Labour voters. So you can see that the majority of people who want a wealth tax, and given the fact that people obsess over polling and say, well, Labour's not doing that bad if you look at the polls and things like that, if you look at certain polls and do certain predictions, etc. If we're meant to base everything on the polls which are constantly changing, by the way, we should do the wealth tax then. We should do the wealth tax based on what they're saying if Labour want to win. So yeah. I saw this YouGov poll, so you can see the Green Party have surged to 17%. They are, I think, joint with Labour and the Conservatives, and they've just gone above the Lib Dems. It's a bit weird the way they've done this graph. It's not the clearest. But you can see they're all around the 20-point mark, which is crazy. I couldn't find the actual tweet that had the number. So if we get rid of the Lib Dems, I'll get rid of the SNP as well. Yeah, they're all around the 17 mark. So I think the Greens were on 16, just below. But it's crazy how kind of that's changed. If you look at it, they were on 10%, back in August. September, climbed to 11 in, last month, basically. For that. So end of September, you're talking 12%. 6th of October this month, 6%, and then wham, jumped to 17. It jumped to about 16, so it jumped out 4 points in the polls in the space of less than a month. And that's what I mean when I tell you guys, don't always believe the polls in terms of, this idea that, Labour will come good or whatever. The polls are constantly changing, yes, but you can see Polanski's making the polls change through his policies, I think his ideas, and also him as a person. He's very charismatic. He's a good public speaker. He's very confident in himself, you can tell. Whereas Starmer's very wooden, very plastic, very me. If you see what I'm saying. So he doesn't come across very well. He doesn't interview very well, and he hides a lot from the media. So, and he does throw his his generals under the bus consistently. So you can see in Polanski, the public see a guy who they probably will end up liking a lot more. Considering if you look at net favourability, he's a lot higher than Keir Starmer. The only problem is he's a lot less known than Keir Starmer as well. But he's doing well. I looked at polling for the under 50s. The Green Party doing extremely well. So the future is very much looking like the Green Party. But, you had the geniuses at the newsagent saying one of the reasons Starmer's become disliked so quickly is that many voters believe he embodies the system. He's almost an AI-generated version of what a politician should look and sound like, which is a crazy statement to make. But when you look at this, right, they put this the most left-wing parliament we'll have ever had. Lewis Goodall on the massive Labour majority, the exit polls suggest. It's crazy, they're equating kind of left-wing ideals with the Labour Party when not much in their manifesto was that left-wing. Let's be serious now. Let's be serious. There wasn't a ton of left-wing stuff in their manifesto. So this idea Goodall was putting out there was complete nonsense. There's a failure of the media class in this country to really explain that, what this Labour government were about, especially given how vague they were. They should have done a lot more to question them. But I think the media, the pundits, they're quite centrist. I think Mateless, Sopel's probably centre-right, small c conservative. Goodall's probably centre-left, that kind of space, I think. They wanted this Labour government because they saw more competent, kind of technocratic people coming in that would have done a lot better than the Conservative Party, and also a party that wouldn't have increased taxes on them, given the Labour Party said no taxes on working people, and they're going to keep the income tax bands the same. Now, I'm assuming that, those three on the podcast would be PAYE. I don't think they would make that much money from, investments and things like that. They would be more salaried employees, unless they get some sort of profit from Global, for their show. So I think personally for me, they saw a party that seemed more competent, but also would increase taxes on them, and that's one of the reasons why they were so excited with this new kind of Labour Party. At least that's my view on it. But yeah, you've got Harriet Harman. You know, I saw a really funny tweet from Polanski saying, "Oh no, we've lost Harriet Harman."
He's a combination of Jeremy Corbyn and Nigel Farage, and neither appeals to me. There's been a lot of focus on Zach Polanski as their new, supposedly dynamic, charismatic leader. For
he is both those things.
Me, the Greens have always seemed like a very sort of collaborative, women's focused, teamly kind of party.
You know, really nice kind of soft liberal party. That's what you're saying. You know, oh, they care about green issues. They don't really care about much else. Blah blah. You know, this kind of very posh party.
And Zach Polanski is not in that vibe at all. He's in the kind of big I am, you know, male leader vibe.
I love how Harriet Harman insinuates that Zach Polanski is a sexist because he's a man.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense. The clip. This is not the clip I actually wanted to use. I had a better one. I had a longer one, but yeah, it's just. I think it's a bit embarrassing from Harriet Harman, to be honest. It doesn't make sense, her criticism of him. You got more from Austerity Boy and The War Criminal.
The greatest prime minister who's ever walked the earth. But Chris points out that the collapse of his ratings is what he calls unprecedented and totally disproportionate. And it is. And so there's something deeper going on that is anti-politics.
I think a lot of this is social media. But if we just dig into those figures for a second, I thought it was a great graph. But Thatcher, when she was unpopular, when she came in, was at about -2 net popularity, got up to +8 in 1984. And when she got to -15 was the moment she left.
Yeah.
Major +12 and leaves on about -10. Blair gets up to +22, leaves on about -8. Cameron leaves on about -20, Rishi about the same.
That's crazy, Cameron being -20, given that he just won a general election as well. Just show you how unpopular he was, and somehow he still managed to beat Ed Miliband.
Starmer goes from -25 down to, as I say today, -52.
Yeah.
And I absolutely agree with you. I got a bit of pushback actually recently from some very, very senior figures who've known all these prime ministers when I was, I'm afraid, doing a slightly cheap jibe at Starmer, kind of lacking charisma, lacking drive. And
it wasn't, you know, I doubt it was that cheap a jibe, given that is true. He does lack charisma.
One of them said to me, Rory, don't be unfair. This guy's a really decent guy. He's highly professional. He's highly serious.
Would you say, guys, honestly, that he's led a highly professional, highly serious group of politicians here? Like, genuinely, like, you know, given that he stumbles in interviews sometimes, he gives really, really, you know, awkward phrases and, you know, defends war crimes and things like that, and then he has to, like, kind of roll it back. I'll never forget him going to a mosque and saying, "We urge Hamas to release the hostages," and you're like, you're in a mosque in Wales, my guy. They don't have a direct line.
And said to me, you know, be careful what you wish for. It's all very well you sitting there being cynical and grumbly, but let me assure you, almost all the other candidates are going to be much, much worse for the country than Keir Starmer.
Well,
I don't know about that. Honestly, I don't. You know, I saw this article from, what's his name, man? John Rentoul, right? He goes, "You'll choke on your green circuit if you lurch to the left." So this is the idea that Starmer needs to move to the left to kind of fend off the Green Party. Because it's not just Farage on the right giving Labour jitters. Zach Polanski's Greens on the left have doubled their support. It would be a disaster if the PM drove the party in their direction to appeal to old school Labour voters, says Rentoul. So British politics could soon be Reform and Green and nothing in between. Since the election, Farage has doubled its support, and in the past 2 months the Greens have increased their support by half. Polanski, the new leader of the Greens of England and Wales, used to be a hypnotherapist, and the powers of suggestion seem to be working on the voters, which is a pretty hilarious phrase to use. Even he might admit the Green surge owes more to disillusionment with Labour than to his charismatic leadership. I mean, sure, you could make the argument. You could also make the argument that the reason Reform are doing well is because of disillusioned Labour voters, but also disillusioned Conservative voters as well, who have lost faith in those parties. But his ambition to replace Labour as the main party of the left seems suddenly more plausible now than it did during the Green leadership campaign in the summer. And do you think that's because, right, the Labour Party have vacated the space of the left, from the left, and so that space is very easily filled by another party? The Greens are still fifth in the polls. In the The Greens are still fifth in a 5-party system, but the four non-reform parties are in the mid-teens in the opinion polls. And with a hellhole budget coming up, there's nothing to stop Labour support falling further, and the Greens continue to rise. Because all Polanski says, why don't you do a wealth tax? Why don't you raise capital gains to be in line with income tax? Why don't you do these things? And what's Labour's answer going to be to those things? Very weak response, no doubt. It seems obvious to many Labour supporters that Starmer should move to the left to win back these voters. But it may seem obvious only because that is what they want Starmer to do anyway, which is a fair argument. That is a fair argument. For most of this parliament, Labour has been losing support to reform and has been gaining it, but those Labour supporters did not advocate moving to the right. In my view, a move to the left would be a disaster. Even if it worked in bringing back voters to Labour, it risks losing voters from the other end of the seesaw to Reform and the Conservatives. And this is Starmer's big problem, because the way he's kind of placed the Labour Party is they are kind of, in some seats, they're relying on people that might move to Reform, and on the other side, they're, struggling with people who might leave to the Greens. So at which point the move of lefters point to studies showing more Labour defectors have gone to parties on the left or to non-voting parties than to the Labour parties on the right, which is true. I think they've hemorrhaged more voters to the Lib Dems and the Greens than they have to Reform. I think Reform have really swept the Conservative vote more than anything. But Labour needs to worry about more defectors to the right for two reasons. One is that they count double. While Labour is fighting Reform, a Labour voter switching to Reform means the Labour vote goes down and the Reform vote goes up. Defection to the Greens means that the Labour Party only vote goes down. But it depends, though, doesn't it? Because Labour could be fighting Greens in certain seats, especially in South England. So that's not really a good argument to make. It depends on how far Green support goes in certain constituencies. That's the main issue. The only reason that the defectors to the right cannot be squeezed, if the defectors to the Greens can be pursued, that their vote will let Farage in as Prime Minister. Some of them will come back. You could make that same argument about some of the Reform voters. Maybe some of them will see the problems in Kent Council, Northampton Council, and other councils which Reform are running, and they think, I don't like Labour, but I don't want they can't run a council, let alone a government. It's a very silly argument to make. That is the tactical centrist argument, if you like. Elections are won on the centre ground, and for Labour to move to the left would cede that ground to Reform. That's not really true, because Reform aren't really moving to the centre. That doesn't make sense. You're not. The only way you cede ground to them is if they take up the ground you have conceded. Reform aren't going to move to the centre. They're going to stay as right wing as they can. But there are more important arguments of principle. The first is that moving left would not work. Those who are upset with the Labour Party for cutting the winter fuel payments for pensioners did not return to the fold when the decision was reversed. There is nothing that Starmer can realistically do that would persuade disaffected voters that he was a proper socialist leading a proper social government. No one ever thought, Keir Starmer was a proper socialist. Not post leadership contest where he denied wanting to nationalise everything. People, this idea that people on the left want this socialist government is, no, I want to see things be nationalised, or at least be legislated properly, so that the public aren't being gouged constantly by greedy companies and executives and investors. That's what I want. So that, if Labour push more, nationalising the rolling stock, getting rid of these predatory companies that keep putting up bills way above even RPI inflation, things like that. That's what I want to see. Actually have regulators like Ofgem and Ofcom and all these other off places do their job properly. That's what I want. The real important argument, though, is that moving left would be the wrong thing to do. When people say they want more authentically Labour policies, they usually mean higher public spending paid for, if they're honest, with higher taxes than the higher rates that Rachel Reeves is about to impose. And, that's what won Labour the vote in 1945 anyways, is that they were pushing, things like the NHS that would be funded via borrowing and taxes. That's what the public wanted back then. That's what got Labour in originally. No, authentically Labour, yes, these are authentically Labour policies, I'm sorry. The other thing that they want is for Labour to stop going on about immigration and the boats. The code is that Labour should not try to out-reform reform, but Farage does not have a monopoly on concern about immigration. Most voters want to stop the boats and believe that there is a fair and compassionate way of doing it. What fair and compassionate ways are they of doing it that the Labour Party is proposing? All they're talking about is smash the gangs. That's what I hear, smash the gangs. So do not think that the easy answer of the so-called left and the right answers to the national problems. Taxes have to go up and the burden has to be spread fairly. But according to ability to pay, but the idea that decent public services can be paid for by levying a tax on the rich is a fantasy. But no one's saying like we'll just do a wealth tax and everything will be fine. No, it's like that's a one arrow in the quiver, mate. That's what it is. It's a one shot the government can take. They'll have other ones, things they can do, like changing capital gains to be equal with income tax. That will help bring in some money as well. There's other things that they can do. This guy is absolute moron. As for the notion that no one would care about uninvited immigration across the channel if ministers didn't mention it, well, I admit that is a caricature, but not much of one. So I do not think that trying to out-green the Greens is the answer, any more than trying to out-reform. Labour should do what is right for the country. What does that mean, though? What does that mean, doing what's right for the country? When all the media do is obsess over small boats crossings and make that a national issue, the point where I think it was the number one, or is in the top 3 issues. Because the media keep endlessly talking about it, because all they're equipped to talk about is, hey, look, number go up, people cross channel, look at this graph. Instead of doing like the actual difficult stuff, we just talk about waiting lists, talk about NHS dentistry, talk about some of the other problems this country is facing, right? All they want to do is talk about, hey, look, there's a boat, where is it going? It's just nuts. Like, this guy's such a moron. How Starmer's plan to fill about 250,000 vacancies in the NHS and care sector progressing. Exactly. That's what, if I was a member of the public, that's what I'd be concerned about, honestly. But ministers keep talking about we need to smash the gangs. That's all we hear about. It's just nonsense. Quite astounding that this could be anyone's takeaway. The party's done. It's true. I think it's 100% correct here, Polanski. Like, this is such a crappy article from such an idiot guy in Rentoul. It doesn't make sense. Look, this is what I was talking about. Look. Oh no, it's find out now. No one cares about find out now. It's just crazy to me. Like, this guy, not Polanski. This guy here, like a lot of the media class, a lot of the kind of people like Polly Toynbee talking about how Starmer's the most unpopular prime minister that could free him. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, look at this shit, guys. Honestly, like, state of these people. Keir Starmer is Britain's most unpopular PM that could liberate him. Like, which idiot is coming up with these articles? Genuinely, like, they're being paid to write this. They're being paid as columnists to The Guardian to write this. Saying, like, he's low in the polls after another nightmare week, dark watches, blah, blah, blah. Their inheritance was more ruinous than feared, which isn't really that true, considering that, the OBR was warning about a black hole kind of the size of that they were talking about anyways. They were bequeathed with landmines, dishonest traps, and gaping holes. What? Landmines? Where? Honestly, I don't get it. Like, they knew what they were getting into for the most part. Brexit is emerging as even more economically crippling than expected. That's not true. That's not true at all. The OBR, I think, predicted it was going to be a £40 billion hit every year to the economy. Has that changed, really? Brexit is emerging as more, now losing the exchequer 80 billion a year. Based on what? Who is saying this? Suddenly now it's gone up. Reeves sets their sights on European Silicon Valley. Like, what is this about? Hitting output by up to 8%, more than twice as much. Who's made this prediction? Keir Starmer's continuing rage to land. The OBR would downgrade its forecasts, right? So he's talking about the OBR, about productivity, because, partly because our infrastructure is aging, partly because our hospitals suck. But yeah, would have found a £9 billion black hole. Where are they getting this 8% figure from, guys? That's what I don't know. Let's see. Who can find it? Where's this? The Bank of England committee member gave a hint of official thinking. Like, recent independent research suggesting that Brexit had lowered Britain's output between 6 and 8%, and investment by 12 to 18. But again, like, who citing who? Now, they also said the exchequer lost not 40 billion but up to 80. So, Brexit being worse. I don't know, guys. Genuinely, on that one, I'll take an L on it if that's wrong. But it's just ridiculous. And again, why were they not talking about Brexit last year when they had to do that really unpopular budget? None of this stuff really makes that much sense in my opinion. So I don't know. I haven't read this article fully. I just saw the headline, but they expect brickbats, but they are human. As often, West Street dares, what all can see, that there is deep disillusionment in the country at the moment, and a growing sense of despair whether anyone is capable of turning this country around. The change Labour promised is not yet visible. We're still lacking the guiding light towards better things to come, and that's what I've been talking about. Like, unless Labour really hit the ground running, they're in big trouble, and they're in big trouble. Yeah, even so, the current vitriolic state of public opinion is perplexing and alarming. Is it that perplexing? Is it that confusing? Why people are annoyed? Keir Starmer's the most unpopular Prime Minister ever. Really? Yes, really. He's a decent, serious man of good intentions. Do you think he had good intentions when he lied to the Labour membership? Was that good intentions? You know, when he said, you know, cutting off food, cutting off fuel was okay by Israel, was that good intentions, really? There was that Simpsons clip as well. Let's see. There's this clip here.
We can't blame you because you have good intentions.
So,
we can't blame you because you have good intentions.
It's just ridiculous, honestly. Like the state of these people and the arguments they make. Oh, you know, we should be okay with him because he had good intentions. Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. You know, as Prime Minister, he's short on charisma, which is true. They say more seriously, he lacks political agility, which is true. Ingenuity, true. Or instinct for where the wind blows, also true. Labour blundered over cuts for pensioners and disabled people, unbalanced high-rating, unbalanced by generosity elsewhere, uncertain which voters appeal to. The party has left policies unheralded, from working rights to green investment, new towns, and a youth guarantee to get young people into work and trading. Too many close advisors think the Daily Mail inflected right wing needs wooing. Then almost twice as many voters have moved leftward as Labour took office. Polling guru John Curtis warns them to stop chasing reform voters. They've gone. And again, they still keep chasing reform voters because they keep talking about smashing the gangs. Labour leader is failing. There's no denying when the pollsters say no leader could ever return from these unplumbed depths. But in the uncharted waters of such extreme volatility, sounds like something out of Jurassic Park. History may be no such guide. Starmer, I did that word in because it sounded dramatic. Starmer pulled Labour from a post-Jeremy Corbyn slog of despond that history said couldn't be turned around in one term. You also have the Conservatives absolutely shooting themselves repeatedly in the head. Like, let's be honest, they do what I've never seen a party self-destruct like this. Never. They completely imploded. He recovered from losing Hartlepool and was dragged back from resigning. In despair, he made a stirring conference speech. So there's impatience for follow-through. I mean, he won because the Conservatives lost. Let's be honest. If he ran the same platform he ran in the 2019 election, he would have taken a beating. He would have took an absolute beating at that point. He would never have won the 20. I don't think he would have even won the 2015 election. The Ed Miliband loss. I don't think he would have done as good as Corbyn did in 2017. I don't think he would have done well in 2019. I think he got very lucky. The Conservative Party ran out of steam completely. They had nothing. They had absolutely nothing left. You know, it's so bad that they picked Kemi Badenoch as the leader of the party. Crazy. Would anyone else do better, or have we reached near ungovernable, insatiable public state of mind? You know, when you keep promising the public change and you don't bring any real change, is it any wonder why the public would be pissed off? Any government may be rejected just as rapidly once in power. However, great its landslide victory unless it arrives in a glided chariot bearing untold bounty for stricken public services and empty private purses. I mean, this is absolute nonsense straw manning saying, you know, the public are being unreasonable. I don't think the public are being that unreasonable, to be honest with you. None is on the horizon. Golden promises from parties in opposition, raising wild hopes, dashed in office, are dismal for democracy, stirred by malevolent social media into perpetual angry disappointment. Unsurprisingly, panic on the backbenches will make talk of leadership change rife. May's election goes as badly as predicted, or some suggest sooner. You've also got the bloody budget coming up as well, and that's going to be a disaster, I think. It's not going well, guys. That's all I'm going to say. That budget could be a real make or break moment for Rachel Reeves. We haven't even got to her versus paperwork yet either. I see some word I can't pronounce. Reaching for Labour Party rulebook, reminding one another For little notice but key change made at last year's conference, it's now easy to challenge the sitting leader of at any time of year, with nomination backed by 20% of Labour MPs, currently 8 of them, before a leader was safe, except in a brief pre-conference window. Why they would make that change, it doesn't make sense. I thought it was there to protect the leader. But who Andy Burnham making his availability known, with well-received radicalism, especially on electoral reform, streeting the best speech of the conference. Really? We're streeting best speech of the conference? With intelligent yearning to pull leftwards. The problem West Streeting is going to have is he's there in cabinet. So, this idea that he wants to pull the place leftward doesn't make any sense when he's there. He's the one that's using the private sector to try and claw down the waiting list. Wherever you think about pragmatism, doesn't sit right with me, honestly. Who are reluctant to copy the Tories. Starmer arrived as the 6th Prime Minister in 8 years. Besides, a new leader may only get a nanosecond honeymoon before sinking under all the same taxes. The thing is, he would have had time if he didn't run on endless negativity. Starmer ran on, talking about how bad the state of the economy was and all of this kind of stuff, right? He entered into doomer mode straight away because he wanted to make the Conservatives look as bad as possible and really disrupt their brand image. But when you go there on a ticket of positivity, on about change, and fixing things, and what did they say? He's then sticking plaster politics, and they need to fix the foundations and all of this stuff, right? It's like, when are you going to start doing that? Are the foundations fixed? Did you put a bandage on instead of a sticking plaster? What's going on? I think it's reasonable for the public to be annoyed, considering on the platform you ran on. I think the public were less annoyed at David Cameron and the austerity government because David Cameron kind of hinted, I think, that he was going to do those kind of things, like talk about how, we're spending too much and we need to cut back and whatnot. So, yeah, many MPs hope that Starmer is listening to the clarion calls for change, be the change he wishes to see. They urge, but does he dare? His critics ask. His decade of renewal urgently needs renewing. Next month's tax-rising budget will meet a storm of outrage from the right, already damning Labour's raid on the middle class. Shrieking headlines will tell them, even beneficiaries, that they have been gouged by socialism. And again, when you put yourself in the straitjacket of not raising income tax, or VAT, or national insurance, right, on workers, and when people ask you how do you define working class, and you have no definition for workers or working class people, it's going to be too right. You get picked on for not understanding the definitions of things you've given to. You've gone full Morehouse here because you're giving out, you're putting out statements here that have traditional definitions, and yet you're trying to redefine them with nothing. You're trying to redefine them with absolute nonsense because you have not defined them properly. If you're trying to redefine something, it means you need a new definition that's actually coherent and makes sense. Whereas if you're running on, no, the left doesn't, there's no such thing as socio-economic policies, it's just economic policies and social policies, you're going to look silly. But yeah, here's Minister's paradox. Labour's only hope lies in despair. Assume they will be wiped out wherever, so use the massive majority 4 more years to follow their natural social democratic instinct, make radical tax reforms, raising plenty. Expect to lose the next election, so do everything now. Forget opinion polls and focus groups. Let voters see sincerity in their purpose. The only way to restore some respect is to do transparently what they think right and fair. And I think if they went in there, they actually got rid of the 2-child benefit cap and actually pushed this idea that we can create a better, fairer society, regardless of someone's background and where they're from. That would have made way more sense. Don't know why I've whitelisted this background because there's endless amounts of ads. So yeah, that respect has become essential to save the country from calamity. The bright light from Caerphilly shows the strong stop reform impulse, with 60% of an exceptional turnout rallying to keep reform out. That requires mass tactical voting for the likeliest anti-Farage candidate. And can Labour regain enough respect from all progressives to ensure that they lent votes in the right seats? And the problem is, though, Labour aren't going to be the choice in some of these seats now. And progressives are going to have to figure out who they're going to back. They're going to back the Liberal Democrats. Are they going to back the Greens in certain seats? Are they going to back the SNP in certain seats? How is this going to work? And that's for progressives to figure out. But this idea that Labour's bad polls is freeing is complete nonsense. Her argument is that Labour have nothing to lose now, so they have to really start figuring out what they're about. And it doesn't make sense. says, as the Tories and Reform grow indistinguishable, the threat increases of rising nationalist, xenophobic, divisive, if you are nasty, anti-democratic extremism. Labour's duty is to do whatever it takes to prevent it. Prepare for coalition. Be acceptable to progressive partners when the name of the party matters less than the red line against the political danger unknown in our lifetimes. That purpose to drive out despair. I think, really, these newspapers really hire some of the worst people. Polly Toynbee and John Rentoul. It's just sad. In my opinion, it's tragic. Oh, sorry, I was meant to talk about the... oh, yeah. Now we go on to talk about the license thing about Rachel Reeves. Yeah, I got it from Simpsons. I think it was Simpsons. So I've got it in my head, that's what it's called. A lot of Simpsons references today. What's it called? The Simpsons, the Dumbocrat. I'm sure it's from Simpsons. It's from that right-wing host guy they have. I'm sure it's... That's what I call them. After austerity, they don't deserve any... Simpson likely refers to, which is common political satire. I can't find it. I'm sure it's from there, though. The reference, I shrunk those Dumbocrats and their bleeding hearts smell fair program. Yeah, it is. It is from The Simpsons. Is it? Sideshow Bob Roberts, season 6. Try and find the actual clip where he says it. This is why my live streams always get derailed of stuff like this, but it was... No, that's frustrating. If it's in this clip, so I know who says it. Yeah, it'll be here somewhere. I don't know what. Oh, my headphones turned off. That's why. Sorry about that.
Wyman says that you're not experienced enough to be mayor. Sir, what do you have to say about that?
I'd say that Les Wyman ought to do more thinking and less.
I can't lie. This is actual genius right here. Whoever wrote this is incredible.
Les Wyman.
That's actually brilliant.
There's no Councilman Les Wyman. Good line, though.
Mayor Quimby, you're well known, sir, for your lenient stance on crime. But suppose for a second that your house was ransacked by thugs, your family tied up in the basement with socks in their mouths.
Yeah, I don't think I'll find it, to be honest, but it's frustrating because it's such a it's so funny. It's honestly such a good line. I don't know if I'll find it. Yeah, he says it. Like, I've seen the thing for it. Where is it gone? Yeah, someone's posted it here, but I can't find it. He calls them the Dumbocrats, which makes me laugh. Yes, some of our friends let's junk those Dumbocrats and their bleeding heart smell fair program. But I can't. It's so annoying because no one's actually posted the clip underneath there, which is frustrating. But yeah, so I call them the liberal Dumbocrats. That's my official name for them. I'll try and give nicknames that are inoffensive, but I'm sorry, Ed Davey. Actually, I'm not sorry.
Some breaking news on the Rachel Reeves rental story.
So this is from 5:40 today. So I just want you guys to know that's on the record. 30th of October for anyone listening in the future for whatever reason.
And it is that the estate agents used by Rachel Reeves to rent out her property in South London, Harvey Wheeler, well, they've apologised to her for what they're calling an oversight after they did not apply for a licence that she needed on her behalf, having offered to do so. So a development there.
I've got a feeling, right, based off some of this. This is actually good legislation, by the way. Good news. New Labour Rights Act passed on Monday will include a database of landlords help tenants identify people who have previously broken the law. This is quite good. As long as there's like mechanisms where it'll actually mean something. This is actually good. But I did see like some of the stuff where Starbucks ethics advisor is again looking at Rachel Reeves' failure to get a license to rent out her home after new emails emerged. And this is the problem where he's gone to the ethics advisor, and instead of investigating and saying, like, look, we should look into this, for whatever reason, the ethics advisor, yes, fine, whatever, get lost. And so, no ethics advisor in the country should ever be doing that. It should be a case of, okay, this is a situation. You bring the person in, to ask, what's going on, what correspondence do you have, and let's actually look at this and see what's happened here. Which is what they should have done. That's what they did with Rayna, and I think that's what should have happened here. Who did you speak to about this stuff? That's what should have happened. And then there's an email chain here, right? Thanks for affirming. I'll get the PAT test also. I will do the selective license. So this is the letting agent who has sent this, right, to the property owner, which would be Reeves or her husband in this case. At the moment, we are only applying for council license. We do not need anything else from redacted, so we should be all good. I should hopefully receive the quote today, sending across with an updated spreadsheet showing the breakdown of cost for you. Let's go ahead, arrange the PAT test and the selective license. Given the properties on the, sure what that is there any more permission required? So it looks like, apologies for not replying, yes, go ahead and arrange the PAT test and the selective license. Given the properties on the redacted, is there any more permission required from redacted? Thanks. Goes letting agent. Thanks. Hi, property owner. Thanks for the answer. The cost for the gas safety certificate is £55, and the EICR was £150 plus VAT. The EICR has already taken place today and took advantage of a cancellation. I'm afraid it did fail. There were a few minor things to do. Selective license will cost £900. Blah blah blah. I don't apply the license until we actually have tenants move in, so this payment won't be needed until they move in. So this is about the actual license, right? The selective license will cost £900. You'll pay in two parts, so £640, and once the application in process, £260. As you will be requiring a selective license, you will need a PAT test as well, which will cost £110 plus VAT. This is a requirement by the council. Shall I arrange this for you as well? And I don't need to apply for a license until we actually have tenants move in, so this payment won't need to be paid until after communion. So what I think what's happened here is the letting agent turned around and said, look, normally our clients, we expect our clients to apply for the licenses themselves. So they tried to throw it back at Reeves and her family. But I've got a feeling that Reeves or her husband found these emails and sent this back to the letting agent to say, like, we were told it, you guys would do this for us. And the company was like, oh shit, we don't normally do this. And so we just assumed. I think that's what's happened here. That's my reading of it. And it turns out, because Reeves said she didn't know she needed a license, which is nonsense, because she tweeted about it, about the licensing thing, like a bit beforehand. So the full PA article on why her estate agent failed to apply for the rental license, the letting agency involved in Rachel Reeves' rental arrangement said it apologised to her for an oversight that led to a failure to obtain a license. Gareth Martin, owner of Harvey and Wheeler, said, we alert our clients to the need for a license in an effort to be helpful. Our previous property manager offered to apply for a license on these clients' behalf. As shown in the correspondence, that property manager suddenly resigned on the Friday before the tenancy began on the Monday. Unfortunately, so, they suddenly resigned. They didn't do a proper handover, and so the company didn't know about it. I think this is more, honestly, I think this is more on the company than anything. Because they shouldn't have, their policy should be either clients apply for these licenses or the company applies for the licenses. You can't have this, some do it, some don't. It should be all in hand. Either you do all of it or you do none of it. So they've apologised. Deeply regret this issue. Anyone buffering, or is it just me? Of course. But yeah, not much I can do about that. I honestly don't think it's Reeves. That's our fault here. And I say this as a top tier Rachel Reeves hater. For her handling of the economy and for her as a person, really, because I don't really like her as a person. I don't think she's in the wrong here, which is difficult for me to say. I'm struggling here in defending Rachel Reeves. I'm dying here, guys. I'm dying. I'm actually melting in my chair as we speak to defend Rachel Reeves. I don't think it's her fault. I thought it might be a case of absentee landlordism. Her expecting the company to do it because she doesn't manage the property, but no, the guy, the estate agent offered to do it and then dipped. So what more can you say really about that? This should be the Now, this is Goodall's take on it.
Most likely explanation here is that from which we've heard from the Chancellor, and indeed Sir Laurie Magnus, the Standards Advisor.
That it was an oversight.
It was an oversight, and of course she had just become Chancellor of the Exchequer, so you can imagine quite easily see how that might happen. All of that said, just because it's not a resignation matter, and can be...
There's blood been to Turkey. What's going on with his hair?
Badenoch is doing what leaders of the opposition do, which is come in hard, unsurprisingly, behind such a senior member of the government. It may not be a resignation matter, but of course it doesn't stop it being embarrassing, because the common theme, in a sense here, with what we saw with Angela Rayner and what we've seen on a couple of other occasions, is really basically the government, in this case local government, but perhaps national government as well, making the rules around this, that or the other more complicated, which of course everybody else has to observe and adhere to and live with, and they themselves being caught out by it. So in a way, what they're showing more than anything else is sometimes the more onerous these regimes become, they are self-evidently showing that they themselves don't always observe them, and that therefore they are rather onerous for everybody else as well.
Which is true. I get his point, but also the fact that, like, with you know, like, with the Rayner one, the company that she employed told her to go seek expert advice. She didn't. Right? You can complain about onerous rules and whatever. Like, they said, look, this is complicated. Go speak to an expert. What Rayner did was her fault. That's completely wrong. But I think what Reeves did in this case is not completely wrong. Don't think this will affect her position. I don't think so. I don't think it was that serious in the first place, to be honest. But I also think, like, based on what's happened here, I think it's probably her husband's dealt with it. He's emailed the estate and said, look, what do we need, etc. The estate just said, look, you're gonna need this license. We'll apply for it on your behalf. Once you actually have a tenant in the building, and that's that. And for some reason, that person resigned very suddenly. And instead of that person doing a proper handover, they didn't. And so it was an oversight in the company, because company policy is that the landlord applies for the licenses. So yeah. But this is my issue here, is the fact that he cleared her, right? Laurie Magnus cleared her of any issues, and then Keir Starmer's ethics advisor has to go back again after clearing her to look at this stuff. I don't know if this is the fault of Starmer, or if this is the fault of Laurie Magnus. It looks like Laurie Magnus is wrong. And again, I have to defend the bloody Labour government, because it looks like the ethics advisor, instead of saying, look, let's investigate this, let's see what's happened here, he goes, no, it's fine. Because it's an inadvertent breach of the law. And I just don't get why he's done that, I'll be honest. But yeah, the emails between Reeves' husband, Nicholas Joycey, and we think the letting agent or counsel are expected to be published later today. Those are the emails that we've gone over. Following a review of the email sent by the Chancellor's husband, new information has come to light. And again, why they didn't speak to her and say, look, do you have any correspondence or anything to back up your position? I don't get why they did that. It makes them look like political amateurs, to be honest with you. It made them look very silly and dragged on the story. It didn't have to be dragged on. Reeves has broken housing law by unlawfully renting out her family home without a license after renting Downing Street, and she knew this was, she knew about the license change, but I don't think it'd be fair to blame her for it, considering, like, I think she went down the right steps of getting it changed. I think I've got the tweet for it here. She goes, I welcome Lead Council's decision to expand the selective landlord licensing policy to include the Armley area. While many private landlords operate in the right way, we know that lots of private tenants in Armley face problems with poorly maintained housing. The schemes mean private landlords in the area be required by law to obtain a licence for any residential property they are seeking to let out and must meet certain criteria to ensure the property is safe and in a decent state of repair. Everyone deserves a safe and secure home. I look forward to continue to work with the local community to improve conditions for renters. And this is the thing where they're talking about PAT tests, which is to do with, like, I think electricals, like mostly sockets and stuff and cables, right? To make sure all the electronics safe. I think there's a thing like a gas certificate as well. So it looked like they asked the landlord, look, what do we need? And the landlord asked the estate agent, what do they need? The estate agent came back, said these things need to be looked into, apply for a license or whatever, right? And for whatever reason, they said they'll take care of it. Now, you could argue, look, did the husband or did Rachel Reeves chase it up? I don't see why they would. I think that's one of the problems with the system we have, is that you outsource the running of your property to another company, and they don't do the job properly. That's what I think we're seeing here, is, you know, a company that, you know, basically takes money. You know, estate agents, in my opinion, are a bit parasitic, because, at least property managers, because all they do is, you know, they occasionally have to look at a property to see if there's any issues, make sure rent is paid, and they just, you know, cream the top of, you know, oh, that's an unfortunate phrase, you know, essentially just take money off people in the rental sector. Now, apparently, like, I think 40% of people's income is going on rent at the moment, like 40%, almost half your salary going just on where you live. It's completely unsustainable. There's a reason why the economy is doing so badly, is because people don't have disposable income. How can the economy do well when no one has money to spend? There's no money circulating within the economy, not properly. I think it should be fine, to be honest. But we've got, you know, Labour's top dog trying to defend this.
Listening to the same words that I'm listening to, and you are hearing evidence of an appalling and egregious breach. You may even have persuaded yourself that £900 is a significantly large sum of money for the Chancellor of the Exchequer to have jeopardised her career in order to avoid paying.
But it's also like the public will see it as a lack of due diligence. Like, you know, I've seen the argument of, well, you couldn't even rent out a home. What makes you think you could run the economy, etc.? Which, you know, is a bit of a weird argument to make. But I don't think it's completely unreasonable to say, like, you couldn't even do basic checks on a house you're renting out. You know, how are you supposed to run, you know, essentially Chancellor, which is an incredibly complex role?
If you believe that, you should probably give your head a wobble. I don't know that anybody can meaningfully argue that this is anything other than a genuine mistake. A lot of people on the right of British media and British politics are very exercised by today, while they were supremely unconcerned when their hero Boris Johnson saw 2 ethics advisors resign in disgust at his contempt for ethics. That's what footballification looks like. This is outrageous. This is outrageous. She's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. How can this happen? Oh, you remember when Boris Johnson's ethics advisors resigned twice because he was such a... yeah, that was great. That was funny, wasn't it? He's such a lad. He's such a top bloke. I love him.
I mean, yeah, but these people are deeply unserious. Like, it's just more of a straw man than anything. Like, you know, saying, like, going to this extreme argument that no one's really making here. Like, yeah, you know, right-wingers are massively hypocrites, but this is the same guy, you know, when you talk about footballification of politics, like, this is a guy who has defended Labour in really indefensible circumstances. And so for him to come up with this, you know, anyone can flip this argument on him, you know, on occasions where he has defended Labour for no reason. Like, it doesn't make sense. So for me, like, it's not the strongest argument to make. Like, do I think that's that serious? No. I think this is the kind of guy who would have defended Rayner initially as well. That's who he is. He's a shill for centrist politicians.
I mean, yeah, we're going for lunch tomorrow. That was really funny when Boris Johnson's ethics advisors resigned. 2 of them, not just 1, 2 of them, because he was...
You know, comparing him to Reeves and stuff, to the worst. Yeah, I guess I know the point he's trying to make. I just don't think it's a very good point, to be honest with you. Because, you know, like, these people will attack Labour over anything. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, some of these people did attack Boris Johnson as well. I just don't think it's a strong argument he's making it, I'll be honest. I'm not seeing it, guys. But yeah, you know, Jonathan Reynolds being asked about this.
This is a government with someone who said he was a solicitor and he wasn't.
Who was that? That was someone who called themselves solicitor, but they wasn't. I remember that one.
Chancellor who slightly misled us about the work she did at the Bank of England.
True.
A homelessness minister who made her own tenants homeless.
True.
And a housing secretary who didn't pay stamp duty. Why?
She didn't pay enough stamp duty.
This level of incompetence among your colleagues.
Well, I mean, it's scary when Nick Ferrari can do this amount of research. When it came to Boris Johnson and talking about, you know, essentially like looking at historic child SA allegations, he was like, you know, he let Boris Johnson just get off with laughing and joking.
She moved into 11 Downing Street. We know her family home she rented out through a letting agent. In Southwark, they have a selective landlord licensing scheme. They don't have that in every borough. We used to have one in Croydon. We don't anymore. We might get another one. It changes. She didn't know. She needed it. Selective licensing schemes are really good things. They're there to make sure road landlords don't do the wrong thing.
Minister, there you are, collecting drugs in Croydon, rounding them up and taking them into police stations. Meanwhile, some of your senior colleagues are bending or breaking the laws, Minister.
She didn't know that there was selective licensing.
She's the
minute she did...
Again, you know, she did know that there was selective licensing because she tweeted about it. it's not a great argument to rate everybody in accordance with Boris Johnson. Yeah, I think the problem was there were right-wingers who went to bat for Boris Johnson, and so if you're now attacking the Labour Party for, essentially lesser crimes here, very lesser crimes here, you look very stupid. But that's why you should be principled, and if there's an issue, you call it out. You don't defend the indefensible, because eventually you're going to attack someone, and they're gonna Uno reverse you so fast it'll make your head spin. And that's why you should remain on principles. That's why you get certain people, even in the left, who defend really bad policies and really bad politicians, and then when they go to attack others, famous example, the guy who's always like, why do they never talk about the situation in Sudan, or the situation in Venezuela, or the situation somewhere else? Why do they only talk about the situation in one particular part of the Middle East? Is it because they're anti-Semitic? Question mark. So yeah, this is the thing. Like when you don't stand on principles, you can get yourself pulled apart by really bad arguments because of the fact that you're not very good at arguing stuff, and you defend things which are really difficult to defend. So that's what I'm saying. But yeah, she obviously did know about the licensing scheme because she tweeted about it. He goes, the scheme means private landlords in the area we are required by law. And now I'm assuming this is the area that she lives in. So yeah, she obviously did know about some sort of rule changes. She's even tweeted the link to it. Green light for rogue landlord scheme, West Leeds Dispatch. So she obviously did know that there was a licensing change happening. The problem was she I don't think it was unreasonable what she said. I don't know if I'm gonna get gunned down by people, but I don't think this one's on her. And like I said, I don't like Rachel Reeves. I think she's illiterate. As a chancellor, she's pretty bad. The only people who seem to be like her are the markets, the bond markets. That's about it. So even then, she's on shaky ground with the bond markets. I don't know, guys. So yeah.
She rectified it. She's put it right. The Prime Minister has gone to his ethics advisor and said, what do I do about this? The ethics advisor has said she's apologised. She put it right. As soon as she knew, she did. There's no more to be done.
That's what I mean. Like, the ethics advisor was way too quick. Laurie Magnus, I think he did not do his job properly in that respect. I think we can end the stream here because I haven't prepared it enough. I think we'll just spend a couple of weeks just churning through stuff. If I move to 2/3 maybe live streams a week, I'll be able to do it. It'll probably be at a bad time, probably around 6ish. I'd want to stream because I don't want to spend I don't want to do it too late because I wake up quite early. That's why you will see me yawning on the Sunday roast, because we record it quite in the evening, and so I'm hella tired because I wake up at quite early. So if you see me yawn, it's not because I'm bored, it's because I'm actually tired. But yeah, I think honestly, guys, I'm gonna try and push the live streaming quite a lot, and yeah, I don't know if I'll ever go back to just doing regular videos and stuff. I don't even know if I can even create the channel just doing live streams, to be honest with you. But I enjoy talking to you guys. I think it's good. Otherwise, I drive people crazy because I end up talking to them about it. People will drive me crazy because they'll end up asking me about it. So Starmer should have someone checking out the government ministers' housing arrangements. Of all the government ministers, the right-wing press is obviously trawling through arrangements, looking for problems. I agree with that. I think they really do need to, because they really look at, do they have the correct licenses and stuff like that? Because the only reason she figured out she didn't have it is because of, I think it's the Daily Mail. So the Daily Mail, very good at research when it comes to dealing with the Labour Party, investigative journalists at their finest. But when it comes to Tories, or who bought Farage's house in Clacton, or should I say, it'd be Farage, his house in Clacton. There's crickets, so maybe they need to focus on that. But like I said, if they wanted to do press reform, they could have done. But again, I don't think the press were wrong in this case. I think for whatever reason they were looking through licenses and probably taxes paid on Labour MPs. They found one, and it's not their fault she didn't have the license. I mean, in this case, it's not Reeves' fault she didn't have the license either. It's the estate agent that fucked up. bad. And you can make the argument though the buck stops with the landlord and things like that. It's not, it's a fair argument, but at the same time, the landlord said they would deal with it. It wasn't anything as serious as the boiler breaking down or something where someone couldn't live there. Like a lack of hot water or mold or anything that really affected anyone's living conditions. It was just a license to prove that they were letting out the property, from what I've read. So I don't think it's that bad. They got the important stuff done, like the PAT test and the gas certificate and all of that stuff. So yeah, I'm not seeing it. Hi Reagan. Yeah, no worries, bro. So yeah, I think we'll end it here. I'll definitely start doing some more live streams, guys. I promise. Things have changed. I think this weekend, a special operations begun. Operation
Sponsor Flame Sabre.
It's time for Flame Sabre, guys. So it's going to be big couple of weeks. I think I'm gonna be working on this project. So I'm not going to reveal too much until I've got it underway, just in case I don't, and I can change Flame Sabre to something else. But it's a cool code name for a project, I think. So Operation Flame Sabre begins, and we're going to be putting people to task. I think I was going to do this months ago, and I think those people really deserved it, and I think now they deserve it a lot more. I think they deserve it a lot more based on the really shit content and the really shit takes I've had to see over the past couple of months. And I've been watching people, I've been listening, and I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed with these characters. Even Sultana, someone who I thought would be okay, has been really, really shit. Like genuinely, I'm listening to the bad take after bad take after bad take, and I'm like, who the fuck do you have on your team? Genuinely, what are you doing? And so, as narcissistic as it sounds, I think the space does need me to an extent, because honestly, guys, like some of the people in the space are abysmal, terrible, absolutely diabolical. Like some of the worst things I've heard. Genuinely, like people talking about rejoin the single market, people getting mad at Polanski because he's persuasive, because he talks about how shit the Labour Party are and how good the Green Party are, and I'm just like, what? You're mad about that? Really? So yeah, Flame Sabre begins, and we're going to be putting people to task. I think this year a lot of change is going to happen, like for me physically and mentally. I'm going to do my best to put in the hard yards that I should have done at the start of the year, towards the end of the year. So it's not just me, starting to put beatings on people online. It's about me making change, I think, and I think that's what it's time to do, because people in the space, maybe we can't blame them, maybe because they have.
We can't blame you because you have good intentions.
I'm tired of that. Like, no, like either do the research or step aside, because someone else can do it. Like I've seen people just absolutely pathetic. Lack of research, no understanding what's going on. You could say, look, I've just stumbled through a live stream where I've tried to read some articles or whatever, right? That's fair. You can say that's a lack of research, true, but there weren't factual areas in what I've said. These are mostly just me stumbling through stuff, because A, I'm tired, I'm rusty, and B, I don't read a lot of articles as much anymore on stream. Like, before I would do it, I'd read through it a few times at least. So I'd end up like the guy whose hat's on too tight. But, I guess I've ended up like the guy whose hat's on too tight. The difference is I can still come up with good takes on the fly, and he can't. His takes, he could do a week's worth of research. It'll still be worse. It'll still be some of the worst takes you'll ever hear. But anyways, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And if you're watching this back, shouts out to you because you're a real G. And I'll catch you guys some point next week. Don't know when. Tuesday. We'll say Tuesday. We'll get back to streaming because there's a lot of content I actually want to cover. Let me just go into the Discord. I try and keep logs of stuff. So I saw this video from fucker.
Pick up the 40 gig data.
Jesus, one sec, guys.
Rubio and JD Vance.
I saw this video from the newsagents, which I thought was interesting and was worth covering, but kind of ran out of time because it's quite a long segment. But I don't mind, if I do like a couple of live streams where we just cover this stuff, we just follow what these people are saying. I think that'd be good. It's not the most mentally taxing. Listen to John Sopel is a chore, but it's a chore I'm willing to put up with for you, the audience. But yeah, I'll catch you guys next week, hopefully Tuesday. I'll schedule it. You should, if you haven't hit the bell icon, hit the bloody bell icon. And if you still don't get notifications at that point, then just message YouTube, just at them on Twitter or something. Because honestly, there's not much more I can do. Honestly, like, you hit the bell icon. I try and do it so it gives you 2 notifications for when I go live. And if it doesn't tell you I've gone live, that's not on me. I can't change that, honestly. But yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. Bye bye.